The first time Rachel brought up the idea of an open marriage, I thought she was joking. We were halfway through a bottle of Pinot Noir, curled up on the couch with a cheesy rom-com playing in the background, and she leaned over, barefoot, legs tangled with mine, and said it like she was asking if I wanted to try Thai instead of Chinese next weekend. We should talk about opening things up. I laughed. A dry, confused chuckle. What? Like, adding a third to the bedroom? No, she said, brushing a strand of her dark hair behind her ear. I mean really opening things up. You date someone. I date someone. See what that does for us. Her words hung in the air like cigarette smoke, thick and cloying. I sat up slowly, searching her face for some hint of sarcasm, irony, anything to tell me she wasn't serious. She met my stare with a calm, unreadable expression. Jake, I love you. You know that. But we've been together a long time. And things, they feel a little stale. Stale. I repeated, more to myself than to her. She nodded. We're still young. Still attractive. And yet we've fallen into this routine. I want to feel desired again. I want to chase and be chased. I don't want to throw our marriage away. I just want to bring the spark back. I tried to find the right words, but everything felt clumsy and childish. What do you say to your wife when she's telling you she wants to sleep with other people, to feel alive again, without destroying what you have? Her hand found mine. It doesn't have to be messy. We can set rules. We should. Rules. The last gasps of structure before chaos. We stayed up until nearly 3 a.m. that night, talking like two business partners trying to finalize a fragile deal. I was quiet at first, guarded. Rachel took the lead. No close friends, she said. That's rule 1. Nobody from our inner circle. I don't want our lives to get weird. I nodded. Okay. No friends. And no family. Her voice was firmer there. That should go without saying. My sister, cousins, your sister, just, no. That part almost made me laugh. Like I'd ever look at Jess, her little sister, that way. Jess was 22, flirty in that chaotic, Gen Z way, but still just her kid sister. The kind of girl who still wore Nirvana shirts from Hot Topic and posted thirst traps with Bible quotes. I sipped what was left of the wine and forced a smile. Deal. We shook on it. Like idiots. Like two people playing with fire and agreeing not to get burned. Rachel seemed lighter after that night. She started working out more, changed her hairstyle, and bought clothes I'd never seen before. Not just sexy, strategic. Low-cut crop tops, curve-hugging jeans. Lingerie that hadn't been worn for me. For the first time in years, she was humming in the mornings, winking across the kitchen while sipping coffee. And every now and then, I caught her texting with a little half-smile, thumbs flying, cheeks faintly flushed. Meanwhile, I tried to play along. I re-downloaded dating apps, set up a profile, and swiped until my fingers went numb. But the matches weren't coming. Or if they were, they fizzled. I was 34, solidly average, and not great at small talk with strangers online. My profile said, married, ethically non-monogamous, and most women took that as code for, I'm a liar trying to cheat. Rachel, though, she was thriving. She'd started coming home late. Not every night, but often enough. Sometimes with an excuse, a friend from yoga, drinks with coworkers. Other nights, no explanation at all. Just the sound of the door unlocking at 1:17 a.m. and the soft thump of heels hitting the floor. She never smelled like the bar. Never liked perfume. Just freshly showered. One night I asked her, carefully, did you meet someone? She hesitated. Maybe. And that was it. I told myself I could handle this. We made the rules. We both agreed. And still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something in me was cracking. I wasn't jealous, not exactly. But I was adrift. Unmoored. Like I had willingly handed my wife a lit match and was now watching our marriage smolder. Late at night, I'd lie in bed alone, eyes on the ceiling, wondering where she was, who she was with, what they were doing, what he did differently, if she moaned louder, if she whispered his name. Sex had become clinical between us in the years before. Mechanical. Now, I imagined her rediscovering passion with someone else while I jerked off in the dark like some emasculated ghost. But I kept my promise. I didn't break the rules. I stayed away from our friends. I ignored the temptation to vent to her sister, even when Jess started posting half-naked selfies from her college apartment and sending me the occasional fire emoji on Instagram. It was playful, I thought. Harmless. Until it wasn't. Until that message slid into my DMs at 2 a.m., a meme, something stupid. But it wasn't the meme that got me. It was the way she followed it with, "You up?" I should have ignored it. I should have logged off. But instead, I typed back, yeah, can't sleep. The next moment, just a blinking cursor on the screen. But I already felt the ground start to shift. That was the night the game really began. There's something about seeing her name pop up on my screen at 2:08 a.m. that makes my chest tighten, not in fear, not even guilt, but something more electric. Jess, Rachel's little sister, 22 and untamed. A wildfire in a crop top. She sent a meme first. Something dumb, a SpongeBob screen grab with a caption about married men staying up late thinking they're still interesting. I would have rolled my eyes if it came from anyone else. But it was Jess. She had that way of teasing that always felt like there was something underneath. You up, came next. I stared at my phone for a long second, thumb hovering, pulse rising. Yeah, I typed back. Can't sleep. 3 dots danced on the screen. Then stopped. Then came back. I figured. You've been liking my posts at weird hours. Caught. Sort of. I didn't even realize I had. Didn't realize you were keeping score. I'm observant, she replied. Plus, my sister said you've been off lately. There it was. That name. My sister. It sobered me for a second. Reminded me that Jess wasn't just some flirty college girl sliding into my DMs. She was Rachel's baby sister. She danced at our wedding in Converse sneakers. I'd given her piggyback rides when she was 15 and heartbroken over some lacrosse player named Zach. I could still hear Rachel's voice echoing in my head. No family. That was one of the 2 rules we actually agreed on. I kept my reply short. We're figuring things out. Jess responded with a heart emoji, and then, seconds later, she's been figuring it out with half the bar scene, from what I've heard. I sat up in bed. What do you mean? A pause. I mean, she wrote, I'm not blind, Jake. Neither are her friends. Look, I know this is none of my business. I probably shouldn't have said anything, but she had said something, and I was staring at it like it was the first honest sentence I'd seen in weeks. My stomach turned. I didn't want to ask, didn't want to know, but the words typed themselves. How many? Another pause. Long this time. I don't know exact numbers, she replied. But let's just say, she's not being as discreet as she thinks. You deserve to know that. If she's gonna play the game, she should at least respect the rules. Respect. What a hollow word now. I closed the app and tossed the phone aside, but sleep wouldn't come. My mind buzzed with questions, with mental images I hated, with Jess's words repeating over and over. She's not being discreet. The next morning, I tried to act normal. Rachel was already gone when I woke up, early yoga, supposedly. The bed beside me still smelled faintly of her perfume and something else I couldn't name. Downstairs, I scrolled through Instagram as I drank my coffee, still half asleep. Jess had posted a new selfie. It wasn't subtle. Her hair was tousled. Her mouth, slightly parted. She was wearing an oversized shirt that wasn't hers, a band tee that hung just low enough to give you ideas. The caption was one word, morning. It had over 200 likes already. I shouldn't have looked. I shouldn't have scrolled. But then I saw it, the shirt. Black. Faded. I knew that shirt. I'd worn that shirt. A Foo Fighters tour tee from 2005 that Rachel had tried to throw out a dozen times, but I always kept tucked in my drawer. Jess had it now. I went back to the DMs. I didn't message her, not right away. But she beat me to it. You recognize the shirt? She wrote, adding a winking emoji. What are you doing? I typed. Her response, having a little fun. Unless you want me to stop? I stared at that sentence for so long my coffee went cold. This wasn't innocent. It hadn't been innocent since she sent that meme. And maybe, I didn't want it to be. That night, Rachel didn't come home again. She sent a lazy text around 11:47 p.m., staying at Lawrence. Wine night turned into wine and tequila night, lol. Don't wait up. No kiss emoji from her had ever felt so hollow. I read the message 3 times, then opened Instagram again. Jess had posted another story. This time she was at a dive bar, holding a drink up to the camera, with some Lana Del Rey track playing in the background. Just a flash of her thigh as she panned down, her nails tracing the rim of the glass. She tagged no one, but I knew. It was for me. Another message lit up my screen. Jess, we should hang sometime. Like, just you and me. Been a minute. I stared at it, my heart thudding in my chest. I should have deleted it. Should have told her no. Should have reminded her of the rules. But instead, I typed 3 simple words. When are you free? The text came in on a Wednesday. Jess, I'm gonna be near your place Friday. Wanna grab a drink? Just us. I stared at it longer than I should have. I knew better. I knew what just a drink meant in her tone. With Rachel, those same 3 words had stopped meaning innocent fun months ago. They had become a prelude, an excuse for everything else. But I typed back. Sure. Come by. We'll keep it casual. Jess, you sure? Me. Why wouldn't I be? Jess, because I'm me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I laid there, listening to the creaks of the house, the hum of the AC, the quiet nothing of Rachel's absence. She didn't come home again, didn't even text this time. Just radio silence until morning. Like I was the one waiting up for a teenager breaking curfew. Friday came with a strange electric tension in the air. I cleaned up around the house more than usual. Changed the sheets. Vacuumed. Lit a candle. Not for Jess, I told myself. Just cleaning. Getting my shit together. For me. By 8 p.m., I was nursing a whiskey, pacing the kitchen in bare feet when I heard the knock. It wasn't timid. Just didn't do timid. She stood there in black jeans, a crop top that might as well have been lingerie, and a leather jacket that looked like it had stories of its own. Her dark hair fell loose around her shoulders, and her smile was already halfway between harmless and dangerous. Hey, stranger, she said, brushing past me without waiting for an invite. You smell like soap and guilt. What's that about? I closed the door behind her, smirking. You always open conversations with a punch? Only when the target's slow enough to take it. We sat on the couch with a couple of drinks, bourbon for me, something neon and carbonated for her. She curled up sideways, one leg tucked beneath her, the other swinging lazily. Her jacket fell off her shoulders as she got comfortable, and I tried not to look at the way her top clung to her curves. Tried. Failed. We talked about nothing and everything. The kind of talk you fall into with someone who knows your history, knows your habits. She teased me about being too serious, too Jake. At one point, she said, you always had this quiet hot thing going on. Like, brooding but soft. I raised an eyebrow. Is that a compliment? It's a warning, she replied, and took a long sip of her drink. I laughed, but something twisted in my gut. I should have stopped her there. Set a boundary. But I didn't. Around 10:30, she got up and wandered to the stereo, flipping through my vinyl like she lived there. She put on an old Rolling Stones record, then turned to me and said, So, no Rachel tonight? I stiffened. Nope. She's out. With who? No idea. Just tilted her head, eyes narrowing. You really don't ask. What's the point? She walked back toward the couch, slow, deliberate. Each step a test of how far she could go. When she sat, she was closer than before. Her thigh brushed mine. Not an accident. You ever get lonely? She asked. I didn't answer. She looked down, tracing the rim of her glass. I always wondered why you stayed with her. Even before this, open marriage thing. She doesn't really see you. Not the way someone should. I felt the heat rise in my chest. A part of me wanted to defend Rachel. Another part wanted to scream. Exactly. Instead, I said, marriage is complicated. Just looked up. Eyes locking on mine. So is attraction. The moment held, long and taut. I saw her chest rise and fall. Felt her leg press into mine just a bit more. I stood up suddenly. You want another drink? Just didn't move. No. I want you to tell me what you're afraid of. That stopped me cold. I'm not afraid, I said. You are, she replied, getting up slowly. You're afraid that if you let yourself want what you want, you'll be just like her. We were inches apart now. She reached out, brushed her fingers over my forearm. But you're not like her, Jake. That's why I messaged you. My breath caught. Jess, we made rules. Rachel and I. She smiled sad and seductive. Yeah? And is she following them? Before I could answer, her phone buzzed. She glanced down. Speak of the devil. I raised an eyebrow. Rachel? Yup, she said, holding it up so I could see. Just sent a photo. Champagne in some guy's hotel suite. Caption says, making memories. I stared at it. Jess whispered, still want to talk about rules? I didn't answer. Couldn't. She stepped closer. I felt her warmth, her breath. Her lips were inches from mine. The gravity between us felt impossible to resist. But I pulled back. Jess, we can't. She searched my face, then smiled, not smug, not disappointed. Just something more complicated. Okay, she said, grabbing her jacket. Then I'll go. She started for the door. My body screamed for me to stop her, to pull her back, to make one reckless decision I wouldn't be able to take back. She paused at the door, looking over her shoulder. You ever change your mind, she said. You know where to find me. The door clicked shut behind her, and I stood there in the silence, my heart pounding, knowing I was already in too deep, even if I hadn't touched her yet. I hadn't intended to go looking. That's the truth. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't the jealous husband rifling through drawers or sniffing shirts. But the lie we told ourselves, the openness, was never honest. And eventually, dishonesty has a scent. It lingers. You don't have to look for it. It finds you. It started with a notification. Rachel's iPad lit up on the nightstand while she was in the shower. A message preview from someone named Eli. Just an emoji next to the name, but it was the wolf that caught my eye. Can't stop thinking about how you looked in that hoodie. Should have stayed one more night. My hoodie. The one she'd stolen years ago, worn every winter. The gray one with the little rip on the sleeve she refused to let me throw out. I hadn't seen it in months. I tapped the screen before I could stop myself. The message disappeared into an Instagram DM. Not on her main account. No, this was a burner. The username was something dumb, flirty at @Ray_light. Like some club girl version of my wife. The profile was private, but I was already logged in through her app. I tapped the little grid icon and felt my stomach drop. It was all there. Photos I'd never seen. Vacation selfies in little beach towns we never visited together. Cocktails with co-workers who were very comfortable with her. She looked radiant in all of them, lit up, alive. Like the version of Rachel I hadn't seen in years. The version she didn't bring home to me. But it was one photo that made my hand go numb. She was lying in a bed, clearly not ours. Her hair was wet, skin sun-kissed, barely covered by a blanket. Her legs were tangled in someone else's. You couldn't see his face, but the outline of his chest, the curve of his bicep, it was unmistakable. And the hoodie she wore? Mine. She captioned the photo, "Sunday mornings are for sin." I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't the sex. I had agreed to sex. What gutted me was the comfort, the intimacy, the quiet morning after. The part that wasn't supposed to be part of the deal. The next post was worse. Her in front of a mirror, lingerie, tongue out, with the caption, "He said we're red." I said we're nothing. I wanted to punch a hole through the drywall. Wanted to rip that tablet in half and throw it into the shower where she was humming some indie pop song like she hadn't just blown our marriage apart in pixels. Instead, I backed out of the app and put it down like it was a live grenade. I stood in the doorway, watching the steam curl around the bathroom light. Rachel's silhouette behind the glass was soft, feminine, familiar, and suddenly a stranger. She was humming, still humming, like she didn't just parade her body across Instagram for some faceless guy with a wolf emoji in his name. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't unsee it. Every time she smiled now, I'd see that caption. Every hoodie she wore, I'd wonder whose bed she'd left to put it on. She stepped out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, hair dripping, face flushed. "Hey," she said, walking past me like I was furniture. "Can you warm up the kettle? I'm freezing." I nodded. Silent. Hands in fists. Downstairs, I put on the kettle, but all I could hear was that phrase over and over. Sunday mornings are for sin. The steam didn't help. It fogged the kitchen window, made the world look distant, unreal. I couldn't decide if I was heartbroken or livid. Maybe both. Maybe those are the same thing. All I knew was this wasn't what we agreed to. This wasn't saving the spark. This was betrayal in a newer, sexier outfit. And yet, what hit me harder than anything was the sheer effort she put into hiding it. Not the lies themselves, but the architecture of deceit. A whole other account. A different Rachel. A woman I didn't even know. A woman who laughed in lingerie with other men while I sat home with cold whiskey and unanswered texts. Later that night, she went out again. "Dinner with Amy," she said, pulling on earrings she hadn't worn in years. "Could be late. Don't wait up." I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Amy, huh?" She glanced back, halfway through a swipe of lipstick. "Yes, Amy." "What?" I shrugged. "Nothing. Just curious." She eyed me for a beat too long. "What's that tone?" "No tone. Just, seems like you've had a lot of late nights lately." "I told you," she said, voice sharp, "this is what we agreed to." I wanted to scream, to show her the burner, to ask how many Elis there were. But I said nothing, because I realized something had changed in me. The moment I saw that picture, something in my gut snapped tight. The trust? Gone. The jealousy? Fading. It was something deeper now, something more calculating. I wasn't going to yell. I was going to match her. Later, lying in bed alone again, I picked up my phone. Jess's last message still sat there, unopened. "Still thinking about you. Or maybe about what we haven't done yet." I clicked reply, and I typed, Come over tomorrow. She didn't ask questions. Just replied. What time? I told her late. I needed it to be dark. I needed the world quiet so I could pretend, even for a moment, that what I was doing wasn't wrong, or at least wasn't worse than what had already been done to me. Rachel didn't come home that night. I didn't even get a text. The last thing she posted on her burner was a boomerang of champagne bubbles, tagged in a rooftop bar downtown. Caption, living my truth. And maybe that's exactly what it was hers. Not ours. Not mine. By 10:22 p.m., Jess was knocking on my front door. No hesitation this time. No flirtatious texting beforehand. Just boldness. She knew what this was. We both did. I opened the door, and there she was, no jacket, just a soft sweater that dipped off one shoulder and tight black jeans that hugged her hips like they were made for her. She had a duffel bag slung over one arm, her hair wild and unbrushed like she'd been too excited or too impulsive to bother fixing it before coming over. Her eyes scanned my face. You okay? No, I said, stepping aside. Come in. The air between us was different now. It wasn't suggestion or possibility, it was inevitability. She dropped the bag, toed off her shoes, and followed me into the kitchen like she'd lived here a dozen times before. Whiskey? I asked. Only if you're joining me. I poured 2 glasses. Neither of us drank. We stood facing each other, silent for a moment, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. Jess set her glass down without sipping. You saw something, didn't you? I nodded. Her burner account. She didn't ask what was on it. She didn't need to. Instead, she took a step closer. Her fingers brushed mine when she took the glass from my hand and set it aside like it was in the way. You were trying to play fair, she whispered. She wasn't. The room shrank around us. The space between our bodies disappeared with it. And suddenly, she was right there close enough that her breath warmed my neck. Are you sure? She asked, even softer now, her voice shaking just slightly with restraint. No, I said honestly. But I'm done being careful. The moment our lips touched, it was everything I'd been suppressing for weeks. Maybe longer. Maybe since the first time I noticed how her eyes lingered when we spoke. Maybe since that fire emoji. Or maybe it had always been there, waiting. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't gentle. It was fire meeting gasoline. She pressed me against the wall, her body lithe and hungry, her hands in my hair. I tasted whiskey and lip balm and something distinctly her, youthful and wild and forbidden. I should have pulled away. I didn't. I deepened it. When she gasped, I kissed down her jaw, across her neck, her sweater slipping farther from her shoulder. My hands gripped her hips, and she pressed her body flush against mine. Every line, every curve, burning through our clothes. Jake, she breathed, fingers curled around my shirt. Say it's okay. I met her eyes. It's past okay. We stumbled toward the stairs, never breaking contact. The climb was clumsy, breathless. I pushed open the bedroom door, and that was when she hesitated. This is where you sleep with her, Jess said softly, eyes scanning the bed like it was sacred ground or cursed. Not anymore, I replied. Not after what I saw. Jess pulled her sweater over her head in one smooth motion. No theatrics. No teasing. She stood there in a simple black bra, her chest rising and falling fast, and for a moment, the fire dimmed just enough for us both to see what we were doing. Not just breaking rules. Shattering them. I've wanted you, she admitted, long before this whole open marriage bullshit. I just didn't know if I was crazy. I stepped forward, kissed her again, and this time it was slower, deeper. Maybe we're both crazy. We didn't rush. Not now. Now that we'd crossed the line, there was no need to sprint through it. I peeled off her jeans, her underwear. She stripped me bare with a reverence that made my throat tighten. Her skin was warm, soft, trembling under my hands. Every breath she took became mine. Every sound she made etched into memory. And when it happened, when we finally gave in, it wasn't revenge. It wasn't even lust. It was relief. A breaking open. An undoing. I whispered her name into her neck as her legs wrapped around me. She whispered mine back, over and over, like she was trying to replace every time Rachel hadn't. Afterward, we lay tangled in the sheets, my arm draped across her stomach, her fingers tracing slow circles on my chest. I should go, she murmured. You don't have to. Just turned her head, smiled, kissed me lightly. If I stay tonight, it'll mean more than it's supposed to. I met her eyes. Maybe that's the point. She didn't leave. In the morning, I woke to the smell of coffee. She was downstairs, barefoot, wearing Rachel's robe, the white silk one with lace trim. She hummed as she made breakfast like she'd done it 100 times before. And when I saw her standing there in that kitchen, sunlight painting her skin golden, flipping pancakes with a sleepy grin on her face, I realized something that terrified me more than the guilt. I didn't regret it. Not even a little. She walked in like she hadn't left a trail of secrets behind her. Rachel, bright-eyed, radiant, and smug. It was Sunday morning. She waltzed through the front door like a woman returning from brunch, not a two-day bender in another man's bed. A reusable shopping bag dangled from her wrist, the kind she only carried when she was trying to look wholesome. "Hey, babe," she said, dropping her keys on the entry table like nothing had changed. "Sorry I didn't call. Lauren's phone died, and we kind of just ran with the weekend." Her tone was syrupy. Practiced. I didn't blink. "It's fine." She looked at me for a second, that little flicker in her eyes like she was trying to figure out whether I knew. I didn't give her anything. No edge in my voice. No shift in my posture. Just calm. Collected. Dangerous. She tilted her head. "Everything okay?" "Of course," I said, offering the most believable lie I've ever told. "We said we'd be honest, right? As long as we keep the rules." Rachel smiled, slow and careful. "Right. The rules." She kissed my cheek, her lips brushing skin that had already been kissed by someone else. And all I could think was, you have no idea how far I've stepped past you. Because while she'd been playing the part of the liberated wife, sneaking out under the banner of freedom, I had already stopped playing. I had turned the game on its head. Jess was over nearly every night that week. She didn't sneak in. She came late, after Rachel had left or claimed to be asleep. Sometimes she brought takeout. Sometimes she didn't even bring shoes. But every time she crossed the threshold, the tension in the house shifted. It was like Jess carried her own gravity, and I couldn't help but get addicted to it. There was something about having her here that made me feel seen again. Not just desired, but understood. And dangerous in a way I hadn't felt in years. The thrill wasn't just the sex, though that, God knows, was incredible. It was the secrecy. The balance of power tipping in my direction for the first time in months. Rachel still thought I was the clueless husband. Still believed I was at home binge-watching old Netflix shows while she moaned into hotel pillows and cheap champagne. But every time she looked at me now, I smiled just a little harder because I knew what she didn't. That she wasn't the only one getting her needs met. That someone else had been in our bed. That her own sister had made breakfast in her favorite robe while I leaned against the kitchen counter and watched her with something close to awe. Just didn't play coy anymore. She'd kiss me at the door when Rachel was gone. Leave scratches on my back like she wanted them found. She didn't care about the danger. In fact, I think it turned her on. "Do you think she suspects?" Jess asked one night, sprawled across my chest as we lay naked in the dark. "No," I said. "She's too in love with her own game to think I'm playing one too." Jess laughed. "She always thought you were too nice." "Nice isn't the same as weak," I murmured, kissing the top of her head. But she forgot that. One morning, Rachel caught me in the hallway and held up my favorite hoodie, the same one she'd worn in that burner account photo, tangled in someone else's sheets. "This still smells like you," she said. I missed it. I took it from her hands. "Thanks," I said, folding it neatly, imagining Jess pulling it over her bare skin while she giggled in my kitchen. "I've missed it too." She gave me a strange look. A little too long. Like maybe something in her gut was catching up to her brain. But she smiled anyway. "Glad we're good," she said, voice light. "I was worried this would get weird." "Oh," I replied, meeting her gaze. "It's not weird." She nodded, satisfied. Walked off like she still owned the room. She didn't. Just texted me 2 hours later. "I'm outside. Tell me when the coast is clear." That afternoon, while Rachel was working late, Jess and I christened the guest bathroom. She bent over the sink, panting into the mirror while I gripped her hips, both of us watching our reflection as we moved together fast, desperate, unashamed. After, she sat on the counter, legs still trembling, brushing her hair back as she said, "You're different now." I looked up from where I was washing my hands. "Different how?" "You used to hesitate. Now you take." I stepped between her thighs, kissed her slowly. "That's because I finally realized something." "What's that?" I looked her dead in the eyes. If Rachel can cheat and smile about it, I can screw the rules and never flinch again. Jess's grin curled, dark and satisfied. The next night, we did it in Rachel's bed. Sheets still smelled like her perfume. Jess didn't care. She climbed on top, hair wild, voice hoarse as she whispered my name over and over, like it was the only word that mattered. In that moment, the guilt was gone. Not buried. Not hidden. Gone. Replaced by something sharper. Something clearer. I wasn't the one being broken anymore. I was the one bending the rules, until they snapped. You learn something strange about yourself when you cheat on a cheater. It doesn't feel like betrayal. It feels like balance. Each time Jess came over, the lines blurred more between revenge and desire, between therapy and lust. We started with stolen hours in the dark, careful, quiet. Then we moved in daylight, in rooms Rachel had decorated, on furniture Rachel had picked. Jess would moan into my neck and laugh after, calling it justice sex. She wasn't wrong. We became experts in subtext. Family dinners turned into battlegrounds of glances and half-smiles. Rachel would pour wine, ask if anyone wanted seconds, while Jess's foot slid up my calf under the table. I'd nearly choke on my pasta while Jess kept her eyes politely on her plate. It became our little theater. And every time Rachel leaned in for a casual kiss or rested her head on my shoulder while watching TV, Jess would lock eyes with me from across the room, smirking like a devil in disguise. I should have felt twisted. Instead, I felt alive. And the craziest part? Rachel had no idea. If anything, she thought I was softening. She'd started acting smug again, like her late nights, her flaky stories, and her newfound glow were somehow winning her the game. She mistook my calm for surrender. "You're handling all this so maturely," she said one night as we folded laundry together. "I think this whole open thing might actually be working." "Yeah," I said, holding up a pair of lace panties I knew weren't hers. She plucked them from my hand without blinking. "Oh, those are Jess's. She must have left them last time she stayed over." I froze. "Relax," she said with a laugh. She told me. She was doing laundry at her place and said she borrowed mine for the weekend. "She's ridiculous." I nodded, playing it off. "She is." We both knew Jess had never stayed over when Rachel was home. But Rachel's ego filled in the blanks for her, as it always did. She assumed Jess was just her silly little sister, playing house in her big sister's shadow. She didn't know Jess had stopped being her shadow weeks ago. She was a wildfire, and I was letting her burn through everything. That weekend, we all went to brunch together. Me, Rachel, and Jess. The holy trinity of disaster. Rachel insisted. "It'll be good for us," she said. "Get back to something that feels normal." Normal. I nearly laughed in her face. Jess wore a short sundress, no bra. She slid into the booth beside me instead of across. Her thigh pressed against mine under the table. Her scent, coconut and something dangerous, hit me instantly. Rachel didn't notice, or maybe didn't care. She was too busy snapping pictures of her mimosa for Instagram. "So," she said brightly, stirring the drink, "any new flings I should know about?" I glanced at Jess, who raised an eyebrow, her lips quirking with amusement. "I've been talking to someone," I said. Jess didn't even flinch. She took a sip of her iced coffee, eyes locked on mine. "Oh yeah?" Rachel asked, intrigued. "Anyone I know?" Jess nudged my foot with hers. "Not really," I said, grinning into my glass. Afterward, Jess lingered while Rachel went to run errands. We ended up on the living room couch, half watching reruns. Jess curled into me like it was the most natural thing in the world, her legs tangled in mine, her hand resting over my heart. "She's starting to get cocky," Jess murmured. "You can tell. She thinks she's in control." Jess looked up at me. "You ever going to tell her?" I hesitated. "Does it matter?" "It will," she said. "Eventually." Later that week, we went to Rachel's parents' place for her dad's birthday. A backyard barbecue, neighbors milling around, the smell of grilled steak and cheap beer filling the air. Jess was already there when we arrived, leaning against the patio rail in cut-off shorts and a cropped tank. She looked at me over her cup, just a flicker of heat in her eyes. Just enough. Rachel's mom complimented how relaxed I seemed lately. I wanted to laugh. Because if they knew, if anyone there knew, that the man flipping burgers had fucked his wife's sister that morning while Rachel was out picking up a gift, they would have dropped their drinks. And yet, here we were, clinking glasses, telling jokes, pretending. The game had never been tighter. Every brush of Jess's fingers as she passed me a drink, every playful insult she tossed my way across the fire pit, was electric. Our language was silent now. We didn't need words. Just glances. Just tension. Rachel told Jess she should date someone serious. Jess shrugged, grinned. "Maybe I already am." I choked on my beer. That night, after the party, after Rachel collapsed in bed drunk and sunburned, Jess texted me one word. "Mine." And I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit. She wasn't just a revenge fling. She wasn't just Rachel's sister. She was the only person in my life who saw me, really saw me, and still wanted more. And Rachel? She was just a woman who lost track of the rules she wrote. It always starts with something small. A detail. A slip. A forgotten object. In this case, it was Jess's necklace. A delicate silver chain with a tiny star charm. She wore it almost constantly, even during sex, the charm bouncing against her collarbone like a punctuation mark to her moans. I'd grown used to brushing it aside with my lips, tugging it gently as I kissed her throat. But I hadn't noticed she left it behind. Not until Rachel found it. It was a Thursday evening. I'd gotten home late from work. Jess had come by earlier in the day. We hadn't even made it to the bed. The stairs had been enough. She wore my hoodie afterward. We laughed. She said something about cooking dinner for me and nothing but socks next time. I didn't see the necklace slip onto the floor near the nightstand. Rachel did. She stood in the doorway when I walked in. Silent. Rigid. Holding the necklace between two fingers like it was radioactive. "Is this Jess's?" she asked flatly. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. She held it up, watching the charm swing. It was in our bedroom. I nodded once. "Yeah, it's hers." Rachel blinked. "Just once." "When?" "Today," I said. No point lying. The game was over. Her mouth parted. She was here. "Yeah." The silence that followed wasn't rage. It wasn't screaming or sobbing. It was worse. It was a stunned, hollow quiet. Like someone watching their house burn and realizing they were the one who lit the match and left the gas on. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You slept with my sister?" I met her eyes. "You slept with a dozen strangers. A coworker. A guy you met at a hotel bar. You wore my hoodie in someone else's bed and posted about it." She froze. "You really think you're still holding the moral high ground here?" The necklace slipped from her hand, hit the hardwood with a sound that felt louder than it should have been. "I trusted you," she said, shaking her head. "You broke that trust first," I shot back, stepping closer. "You lied. You went behind my back. You made rules and then broke them when they no longer served you. I just played by your new ones." Rachel backed up a step. "She's my sister, Jake. And that was your marriage," I snapped. "You threw it away. You treated it like a leash you couldn't wait to cut loose from. So don't come in here crying about lines that I crossed after you bulldozed through the ones we drew together." She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. Maybe the version of me she thought she married, the obedient, quiet, stable man who never looked up from his book when she left the house at 10 p.m. in a dress too tight for wine night, had finally vanished. I walked past her, into the living room, grabbed my phone. "You want to see something else?" I asked. "What?" I turned the screen toward her. Her burner account. The photos. The captions. Her legs wrapped around strangers. Her smile caught in moments she never shared with me. Her expression went cold. "You went through my stuff?" I laughed, loud and bitter. "You posted it. Public burner or not, you weren't hiding it from the world. Just from me." She reached for the phone. I pulled it back. "No," I said. "You don't get to play victim now." Her jaw clenched. "You think screwing Jess makes this even?" "No," I said. "It makes it honest." She let out a breath that sounded more like a growl. "You bastard." I shrugged. "Maybe. But I didn't start this." She turned to leave, and for a moment, I thought that would be it. That she'd walk away and I'd never see her again. But then she spun around, eyes blazing. "She's young, Jake. So were you when you started sleeping around. She doesn't even know what she's doing. You've manipulated her." I stood, voice rising. "She knows exactly what she's doing. She's not a child. She's not a victim. She came to me. And when I was lying in bed, wondering where you were, she was the one who reminded me I deserved to be wanted." Rachel flinched. Just slightly. I stepped forward, quieter now. "You want to judge me? Go ahead. But don't pretend your sister doesn't know who you are. She saw it before I did. That's why she doesn't feel sorry for you." Her face crumpled, just for a second. Then she turned and stormed out. I didn't follow. The door slammed behind her. And I stood in the silence, the necklace still on the floor, the echo of her footsteps dying out. A minute later, my phone buzzed. "Jess, she found it, didn't she?" I stared at the screen. "Me. Yeah. Jess, you okay?" "Me. Yeah. Jess, want me to come over?" I smiled. "Me. Already unlocked the door." The door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture frames. Rachel's voice echoed through the house before I even stepped into the kitchen. Where is she? Jess didn't flinch. She was sitting on the counter in my hoodie, hair still damp from the shower, a coffee mug cradled in her hands like it was just another lazy Sunday. She didn't turn around at the sound of her sister's fury. Just took a sip and waited. Jess, Rachel hissed, stepping into the kitchen like a storm. Get out. Jess finally looked at her. Calm. Steady. You still have a key, huh? Don't do this, Rachel snapped. You're my sister. Jess shrugged. And you're my sister. But that didn't stop you from blowing up your marriage for attention and lies. You don't know what I've been through. I know exactly what you've been through, Jess said, hopping down from the counter, setting her mug aside. I watched you stop loving him. I watched you get bored. And instead of fixing it, instead of trying, you put your mouth on everything with a pulse and called it empowerment. You're just a kid playing grown-up. Jess stepped forward. I'm not the one who needed strangers to feel alive. Rachel looked at me then. You're just going to stand there? I leaned back against the doorframe, arms crossed. I told you. I'm done defending you. Her eyes narrowed. This is sick. She's my sister, Jake. And you're my wife, I shot back. At least, you used to be. Jess folded her arms. You think I regret this? Rachel spun toward her. You should. He's my husband. Not anymore, Jess said. You gave him away the second you started calling hotel flings self-discovery. Don't get mad at me for showing him what it feels like to be wanted again. The silence that followed was brutal. Rachel's lip trembled. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Jess laughed once. Cold. You never do. You just light fires and hope someone else puts them out. I watched her crumble, not dramatically. Not the way she probably imagined if this day ever came. Just quietly. A tiny shudder in her breath. Her hand going up to her face like she could still cover up the truth. I loved you, she said to Jess, voice cracking. You're my baby sister. Jess's voice softened, but only for a second. And I loved you too. But I'm not going to apologize for being the one who stayed when you left. Rachel shook her head. I can't believe you're actually in love with him. I met her eyes. I didn't plan this, I said. But somewhere between your lies and her honesty, I started remembering what it feels like to be chosen. You don't love her, Rachel spat. You're angry. You're getting off on this. You're just using her. Jess stepped in between us. He's not using me. And I'm not some idiot college girl chasing a crush. I know what this is. I want what this is. Rachel stared at her. He's 13 years older than you. Good, Jess snapped. He's grown. He's real. And he's not running off to bars and strangers when things get uncomfortable. Rachel's voice cracked. You can't just replace me. Jess's jaw tightened. You already did. That landed like a slap. Rachel turned, ready to leave, but stopped in the hallway, hand hovering over the doorframe. She looked back. What now? I looked at her. Now you leave. And I stay. With someone who doesn't need a secret account to remember I matter. She didn't slam the door this time. It closed soft, like she had nothing left to throw. Jess exhaled and sank onto the couch, pulling her knees to her chest. Well, that was dramatic. I laughed under my breath. You okay? She nodded. Are you? I walked over, sat beside her. For the first time in a long time. She leaned into me. I meant what I said, you know. Which part? All of it. I didn't say anything right away. Instead, I took her hand and laced my fingers through hers. We sat like that, in the quiet aftermath of it all, two people who never planned for any of this, and yet, somehow, found something real in the wreckage. The first morning without Rachel in the house felt surreal. No high heels tapping down the hallway. No citrusy perfume wafting into the bathroom before I could brush my teeth. No tension curling in my gut when she kissed my cheek goodbye, lying with her lips while her eyes looked past me. Just quiet. Real quiet. Jess was still asleep, sprawled across the bed in my t-shirt, one leg draped over my side like she was trying to claim me even in sleep. Her hair was a mess, her makeup long gone, and yet I couldn't stop staring. Not because she was perfect, because she was present. She hadn't moved out of guilt. She hadn't left in shame. When the world cracked open last night, she stayed, unapologetic and whole. Rachel, meanwhile, had done what Rachel always did. Vanished. I hadn't heard a word since she walked out. No texts. No angry emails. No begging to undo what had been done. I think she knew. There was nothing left to undo. That afternoon, Jess padded into the kitchen barefoot, yawning, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She looked around like she was seeing it differently now. What? I asked. She leaned against the counter. It's weird. What is? This house, she said. It's always been hers in my head. Now I walk through it, and it feels like ours. I sipped my coffee. That bother you? Jess shook her head. Not even a little. But it's gonna need some redecorating. I laughed. I had a feeling you'd say that. And so, we started from scratch. Rachel's throw pillows were the first to go. The over-curated decor, the overpriced art prints, the wine rack she never used, all gone by the weekend. Jess helped me move the couch, rearrange the bookshelves. She painted the guest room with music blasting through the speakers, singing along between brush strokes, getting pain in her hair, and not caring in the slightest. She brought life into the house where everything used to feel calculated. We took the photos off the walls, wedding shots, anniversary trips, fake smiles frozen in time. I boxed them up without sentiment, without hesitation. Jess slipped in her own little touches. A messy stack of novels by the couch. Vinyl records leaned against the wall by the stereo. A coffee mug she bought that read, Reformed Homewrecker. I nearly spit out my drink when she brought it home. You're not a homewrecker, I told her. She smirked. No, just an upgrade. We fell into something that wasn't perfect, but it was real. There were no rules to navigate, no agreements to renegotiate, no masked intentions. We were blunt, sometimes too much. We fought. We had incredible make-up sex. We laughed during arguments and danced in the kitchen when the coffee hit just right. And slowly, the pain I carried around like an extra limb began to shrink. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for Rachel to apologize, or just to second guess, or the past to undo itself. I was living. Really, fully, messily living. One morning, weeks later, I woke up to Jess humming in the kitchen. The sun spilled through the windows, catching her in soft gold light. She was dancing barefoot, a spatula in one hand, my t-shirt barely covering her thighs. Her hair was piled messily on her head, and pancake batter smudged her cheek. I leaned against the doorway, watching her. She caught me staring, smiled. You're thinking something cheesy, aren't you? Yeah, I said, walking toward her. I'm thinking this is the most honest thing I've ever known. She blinked. Well, that's actually cheesier than I expected. I kissed her. And in that moment, I realized something I wish I had known at the beginning. Some people don't cheat because they're desperate. They cheat because they're empty. Rachel had been chasing something outside of herself, blaming me for the silence inside her that she never dared to confront. But Jess? Jess didn't need filling. She needed freedom. And so did I. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what we'll be in 5 years. But I do know this. I stopped fighting to fix a marriage that was designed to fail. And I started building something that was never meant to be a game. It was meant to be ours.